Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video review series where we take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, we'll be reviewing the item compendium Famzax Presents Cursed Items, or I guess improved items according to Famzax, designed by Patrick Reza for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you are interested in a sponsored review, please reach out via email, Twitter, or Discord, or my submission form at roguewatson.com. And if you enjoy the content, consider using my affiliate links for online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. This is a magic item book that adds new cursed effects to not every item, but a lot of the magic items from the Dungeon Master's Guide, which I actually took the liberty of counting them because I wanted to see what the ratio was. There are over 250 magic items in the Dungeon Master's Guide. That includes each potion as a heading, but then it takes like all the Eon Stones and puts them under like one number. I basically just looked at every major heading and counted that, and I came up with over I think it was like 260 something. This book includes over 150 of those items that are found in the Dungeon Master's Guide and adds new curse effects. So curses, we should all be aware of them, but just in case you're not, are magic items that have some kind of mysterious debilitation about them, some kind of extra effect, and typically this curse is not detectable until you've already attuned and thus already have the curse bestowed upon you. It's kind of a trap in a way. So it's something that should be taken with care, I think, from a lot of DMs. You don't want to obviously curse all of your items and turn loot into this big scary thing that nobody's going to want. But done in the right context, and especially giving your players perhaps an item that is way too powerful, but then maybe bearing it with some kind of important curse. Obviously, the best example of that, and turns an entire campaign into this, is the Lord of the Rings, where Frodo gets a very powerful ring of invisibility, but of course it comes with a huge curse in that you are being hunted every time you wear the damn thing. So those are the kind of, you can build a whole campaign out of cursed items, or you can just make it a fun little side quest the players have to deal with, or maybe something that just kind of happens whenever they use this item. It's got some other effect. I did not take the liberty of counting how many cursed items are in the base Dungeon Master's Guidebook, but there are some already that tend to have, some cool effects here and there and some good examples. And the Dungeon Master's Guide, I believe, has examples of how to make cursed items as well. And this book includes excerpts from the Dungeon Master's Guide, as well as new optional rules for breaking curses, because, as the designer has pointed out here, a lot of problems or hazards or effects in D&D, for example, resting, can often be trivialized when the players reach a certain level and gain access to certain powerful spells and abilities. And in this case, the Remove Curse spell, I think it's only like a 3rd level spell, which, only for tier 1 is a big deal, but maybe when you get up to tier 3, it's not that bad to just throw a Remove Curse on an item. And this suggests, hey, if you really want to keep using, big, strong curses, especially later in the game, then here are some other tips. And really it suggests in this cool like bullet point example is, turning it into like kind of a side quest, and yet, you have to do something else besides just the Remove Curse. Or if you want to treat it more of just a randomized thing, then maybe it's Remove Curse, but you also have to use some kind of certain resources or certain other effects to be able to remove that item. So I do appreciate that these extra rules and ideas were provided here, because that is kind of a weird issue, is that cursed items just aren't as scary to higher level players versus lower level players, and lower level players are already going to be very worried about a cursed item because the curse itself is usually going to be pretty nasty pants. So this is a really great looking book. I am biased because my favorite color is purple, so clearly I love the color scheme that's being used here, which is all purple for everything. But we actually get like new artwork used for all of these items, which I believe, Midjourney, which is Patrick Race, is credited as an interior illustrator, which is awesome. I love the look of that, even though they could have clearly, grabbed images maybe from the Dungeon Master's Guide and just reused those. But I love that we actually have a really nice looking physical product that looks like it is ripped directly out of the Dungeon Master's Guide. And the actual items are fantastic. So this doesn't bother to regurgitate all the information from the Dungeon Master's Guide, which means this is effectively an expansion. Now, hopefully you've already got the Dungeon Master's Guide. I can't believe why you wouldn't. If you're looking at DM's Guild stuff, that should be the first thing you pick up. So this is basically a direct expansion because it doesn't try to relist what all these items are. Instead, it just adds new curse effects. And I will give you some examples of some ones I've found particularly interesting. So if you want a cursed animated shield, for example, animated shield is a magic shield that kind of pops into existence whenever you're attacked. I believe you can use it as different reaction effects. This one says that while cursed, you are filled with a sense of unwavering safety, making it impossible to wake up with sound alone. And essentially, nobody can rouse you. Like if you're, in camp and somebody's, shouting an alarm for you to get up, you literally cannot be woken up that way. Instead, it's like the magic sleep spell where somebody has to slap you awake by using an action, and you're incapacitated for a round. So you just sleep very, very soundly. The Boots of Levitation, another one I enjoyed, is that while cursed, you automatically levitate 20 feet upwards each round, requiring none of your movement. You can't voluntarily end the spell, and it doesn't require concentration. Whoops. So it's Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory when you're just slowly rising up. Hopefully there's no giant bladed ceiling fan above you, but that's just pretty funny. The Brooch of Shielding, this is not the one, but there's another one I'll talk about in a second. It casts Autolux Resilient Sphere on you for 1 minute whenever you drop to 0 hit points. That sounds pretty good, right? It's like an instant protection thing, but then you realize when you drop to 0 hit points, you're probably rolling death saves, and often the way you get people out of this mess is by healing them, and Autolux Resilient Sphere actually protects you from any outside healing or anything like that, so that becomes actually a really dangerous cursed item, but may never come into effect, and you may never even realize it until that curse actually happens, because I believe a lot of these are supposed to be undetectable. Maybe you can detect them when you're attuned. I forget how that works, but that'd be pretty interesting to just be like you've had this item for 20 sessions, all of a sudden you drop to 0 hit points. The DM's like, oh hey, by the way, a magic bubble appears around you as your Brooch of Shielding starts glowing. These little ice symbols, by the way, kind of represent any special or unusual effects I believe that happens. Famzax, who is a character in this book, which I do appreciate. A lot of creators do this. They kind of copy the D&D thing of having it be, some in-universe character is actually penning this, which I enjoy. I think that's a fun way of injecting personality into it. And Famzax seems like a saucy lich, which is just a fabulous character. He's got a foreword here, and then thankfully does have a few of these kind of sidebars written in here that seem pretty fun. As always, I would want even more of that. It would be really fun to just have little story blips here and there with this character. I always love those little personality sidebars or in-game things, even though obviously the players are never seeing that. But for the DM reading that, I think it adds a lot. But I enjoy the fact that we do get some in here as well, that he adds his own little bits and blurbs and information in here. The Cap of Water, and the eyeball just represents things that Famzax himself was saying. These are maybe a little bit unusual or different than what you would expect from a cursed item being able to do. The Cap of Water Breathing, once you submerge your head in it, in other words, to get the effects of the Cap of Water Breathing, suddenly you can't breathe air for the next couple hours. That's a pain in the ass. The Chime of Opening, all your pants pockets and things rip open, which is pretty funny. A lot of these, they do kind of lean on the opposite thing happens, right? Which, okay, fine, that's fine. But then there's some other ones like that Animated Shield or the Brooch of Shielding, which do entirely different effects altogether, which I find really, really fun. But then, you've got the Circlet of Blasting, which is, hey, this has a cumulative 10% chance to just cast basically Scorching Ray on yourself. And then there's a similar one as the Necklace of Fireballs. As you can imagine, I think it's also used in Tomb of Annihilation as a trap. As a cursed item. As soon as you try to detach one of the beads to throw it as a fireball spell, instead the entire necklace explodes. Everybody has to roll a dex save, except for you. You just auto-fail it, and it does 1,000,000 damage to you because it's multiple fireballs exploding. The Cloak of Arachnida slowly transforms you into a drow and then eventually into a drider, where you just straight up turn your character into a character sheet, and that's it. You do get to make charisma saves, and I believe you have to fail several times in a row each day. So clearly that's not something you want to be ending up with for too long amount of time. The Dragon Slayer, any dragon within 10 miles of you can sense your location. That seems pretty dangerous. The Gem of Brightness, interesting. That's a gem that normally you can use to blind people and use different charges. In this sense, you automatically fail to discern illusions, and you have disadvantage against saving throws or spells that create illusions. That's kind of an interesting effect, I think. The Goggles of Night, of course, bestows sunlight sensitivity on you. That's a giant pain in the ass. I love the Gloves of Missile Snaring. So this is an item that basically gives you the monk ability to grab arrows out of the air and kind of redirect them and all that. In this case, your hands sometimes unconsciously grab passing things. For example, grabbing the arm or sleeve of a bypasser, or snatching a small item from a shelf you walk by. The DM determines how often and when this happens. That's a really fun idea for a cursed item, and something I think the player would really enjoy to play up. It's not necessarily like horrifically debilitating in combat, like giving somebody sunlight sensitivity, and yet they can really play up the RP of that. And clearly, if they walk into a store, and maybe the player even does that because they just want to see what happens, they just start snatching things like subconsciously, and maybe they have to deal with the repercussions. So that's a really, really clever idea, and also makes sense because of the, you know, you can think about the gloves of grabbing stuff. There's a similar one, I believe it's the Wand of Web, that kind of has a similar effect where like your hands literally become sticky, but it's like instead of grabbing things, you have problem like manipulating objects. So anytime it would normally cost like a free action to just manipulate some object, all of a sudden it costs you a full action because you have like your hands are like too grippy or something. So those are really fun ideas. Instrument of the Bards can, and I just wrote down a bunch of my ones that I like if you can't tell. Instrument of the Bards can reduce your bardic inspiration die. That seems really nasty. The Mace of Smiting, if you roll a 1 on that thing, it triggers an attack from everyone within 5 feet of you. Can use the reaction to make them, as if you would like set off an attack of opportunity, basically. That's pretty nasty. Mace of Terror, of course, can cast fear on you. We talked about the Necklace of Fireballs. The Staff of the Python, the actual snake that's summoned, is hostile to you. So you get the feeling that a lot of these are kind of obvious but still fun, and then others are just really interesting and fun in some cool ways. And, you know, I kind of did my own little thing with this in Rime of the Frostmaiden with the Shardolin crafting system, where I allowed a player, an artificer in our game, to be able to craft their own Shardolin items by giving them certain pieces of raw Shardolin. And they could literally choose from like a MMO-style crafting list of different magic items they could create. But the drawback was every single one of those items had some kind of effectively a curse. It was like, if you miss with this, you know, if you want to make a sword with this, that's fine. But if you miss an attack with this, then you have to make, you know, some kind of save, or else you suffer like temporary short-term madness or something. All of them had a very similar curse effect because they were all made from Shardolin items. And I wanted to explain the fact that you can, while somebody like you who's skilled and can use this item, it still comes with a risk factor. And that's what I really like about cursed items, is when they come with that kind of risk reward factor. And it allows you, I think, to maybe either give players more powerful loot, or, you know, more loot in general, or give them those higher level items for lower level players, or let them craft their own items, or some other system, but you can include that kind of negative quality. But there's one that reminded me of that, which was the Wand of the War Mage, of the ones that I made, which is when you miss with a spell attack while cursed, you take psychic damage equal to 1d4 times the bonus of the wand. Because that just said, well, if you never miss, then we're fine. Like, you can just use this wand and get its effects, which is just, I think it adds a base modifier to all your attack rolls. Hey, as long as you never miss, this curse never comes up. So those kind of things are very interesting. Versus, and, you know, same thing with like the Wand of Fireballs or whatever, where it's like you have to worry about, you know, a 10% chance to fail. Well, you know, as long as you're not failing, we're good to go. So there's a little bit of risk reward there, which I think is really fun and rewarding. And I just love that a lot of these curses, like, yes, some of them are pretty obvious in what they do. Others just add really, really interesting effects. Sort of answering, this is what I was looking for. This one has the coolest effect I've ever seen, to the fact that this could easily be its own magic item. So the base sort of answering, it's just a +3 sword. I think it's got like 1 or 2 extra things. But its main thing is it's tied to certain alignments. You have to be a very specific alignment to use certain swords. I don't think that part is actually tied into this, but what it is when you drop to 0 hit points while carrying the sword, the cursed version of it, the magic keeps your unconscious body standing. While unconscious, however, you must spend your turn attacking the closest creature to you. You are considered stable, so you don't have to make death saves. But any more damage you take while you're still active and unconscious reduces your maximum hit points. And then if you reduce to 0, your body just explodes and the sword is gone and everything is just bad news. But essentially, you just keep attacking while it's correct. The sword just puppets you. It's fucking crazy. Like, you drop to 0, you don't care. You're unconscious and stable, and you just keep attacking. But notice how there's no friend or foe system. Like, you're just attacking everybody in range. That is a crazy cool effect. And made even cooler if the player doesn't realize that that's going to happen. That just suddenly the sword just glows and you feel it just completely animating your unconscious body. I love that idea. That is amazing. So some really, really cool cursed item effects in here. All of that is a huge thumbs up and instant recommendation from me, but that's not all. We also get our trick items. Now, I have seen this concept used before, which are usually in a way jokier manner than this one. This one is actually more, you know, like creating more legit items instead of just like punny things or something. In this case, trick items are items that are designed to look and act like existing items in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I think none of which are included in the aforementioned, the previous section, but yet they do something completely different. So, like, for example, instead of a bag of tricks, which is the one where you pull out, it's little Pokeballs of beasts and they get summon different beasts, it's a bag of flies. And it appears like a bag of tricks. When you reach in there and grab it and pull it out, instead of summoning a beast, it summons just a cloud of flies that like poison people and they obscure the vision. It doesn't do the beast thing at all. So it's just a completely different item. These elemental catalysts and inhibitors, you think you're getting an elemental gem, which you throw it and you summon an elemental. Instead, everybody has to make a save, or you gain either, for the inhibitor, you gain damage resistance, and for the catalyst, you gain damage vulnerability. And you wouldn't necessarily know unless you're throwing it, are you throwing it at a bunch of enemies? Probably, in which case one of them's good and one's bad, or you could throw them at yourself. But you're not going to know because you think it's an elemental gem. Now, I would be very, very careful with these items because clearly tricking your players into thinking they have one thing and they're not going to know what it technically does until it does the other. You don't want to lose that kind of trust necessarily. So I would be very wary about using these too much, but I think there are some good ideas, especially if your players are veterans of D&D and have seen a lot of these items before and know exactly what they are. Perhaps because of metagaming, it's just hard to not, you see you describe it and like, oh, that's a bag of tricks, or that's a bag of holding, or that's an alchemy jug, or that's a Horn of Valhalla, or that's a portable hole, I believe is the base one, or sending stones, like robe of useful things. They know what these, drift globe, they know what these items are, and yet you can have it look like that item and then have it have a completely different result. It's a tricky thing to pull off, but I do think there's some really cool ideas in here. Instead of an alchemy jug, I believe this is the oozy jug, which literally summons oozes out of it instead of like mayonnaise and wine or whatever else the alchemy jug makes. That's pretty insane. That's a huge change to that item. I would be very careful about that one. I'm not as big a fan about Keogtum's emollient instead of whatever their healing ointment, I believe is the base one that just heals you if you rub it on somebody's skin, or I believe you can ingest it also. Instead, it just does damage. That's kind of lame. I don't like the ones that like, it does the opposite thing. Like, that just feels too cruel and mean. Like, clearly they were needing to be healed, and now you're gonna poison them and do damage. Like, maybe we could have done something else. Like, all right, now creatures are attracted to you, and you have like a taunt effect or something because you smell good. I don't know, but the portable tunnel is a great variant of the portable hole. In this case, it always comes in pairs. And whenever you open it up, people are sucked into it. I believe they have to make a strength save. They get sucked into it. They tumble down for a couple hours, and then they get pulled out into wherever the other tunnel is, which then which expands and goes somewhere. Which, as a DM, you can just have your players find one. They use it. Everybody gets sucked in there, and all of a sudden they pop out in whoever the hell where you want them to, because that'd be a pretty crazy effect. So really fun ideas here. Robe of useless things. Instead, you just roll a d100, and that determines what kind of object is it either directly impedes you, or does it help you, or is it the exact item you're looking for? You kind of have to really play with that one as a DM. The Snog Globe is more like a little music box instead of a drift globe that can make people cast like suggestion and stare at just the globe. I really like these ideas. I would just caution anybody putting my DM hat on, or my advisor hat on, and just say, be careful about using these. Use them use cursed items in general very sparingly, although I think they can be very effective. As I mentioned, if you maybe let your players craft items or give them a lot of items, or in general, I think you can go maybe more overboard with the curses. But with the trick items, I would be very, very careful. Unless your players are very recognizable, these things are already laden with magic items, and then I think you can have a lot of fun maybe tricking them in some ways with these more interesting effects. But I think they are very interesting, and those are some really fun ideas in there. All right, my pros and cons for Famzax, not Famzax, Famzax, sorry. Mr. Zax, I didn't mean to pronounce you. New curses for over 150 items in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Honestly, in a lot of ways, I praised the Monster Weaknesses book, which is something I reviewed, I believe, earlier this year. It's December, so it's hard to tell this year. Which took all of the, as well as a Home Field Advantage, I believe. There's a lot of books which look at the monster manual, the base guide, and then expand on that. This basically does that, but for the magic item section of the Dungeon Master's Guide. So it's like a wonderful expansion to those items you already have. It only adds a couple items, which are actually another pro in here, which are the trick items. But in terms of adding new curses, I think it's phenomenal how much material we get, and I was really impressed that they're not all just, haha, it does the opposite thing, although there are a couple of those in there. But instead, there are some really cool different ideas that to me as a DM, I'm even thinking, oh, this is just a good magic item, I think, that has some really cool effects, you know, curse or not. Pro, over a dozen trick items that appear as familiar magic items, but with unexpected results. Those are also some very cool ideas. I would just be cautious about people using those too many times, even though they are very fun. But I think especially against players who are veterans and are used to those kind of items, it can be fun to kind of pull the rug out from under them and trick them with an item that maybe they don't think is quite what they think it is, especially if it's something they're not like diehard crazy about, like, oh yes, a bag of tricks and want that forever. Like, then it feels really bad to like, oh, it's not really a bag of tricks, it's a bag of flies. But if it's something where they're like, oh yeah, okay, this seems fun, I might pull this out now and then all of a sudden it has the cursed effect, then they're like, oh, this is kind of different, okay. Unless, of course, it does terrible things to them, in which case they're like, oh, I don't want to use this. But the curse does stay with you. That's a rule, which goes to our other pro optional rules for breaking curses. So you can't just, like, I think, deattune to the item. The curse always stays with you, but you can use things like the remove curse spell. Well, this says, hey, there's other things you can do. There's other variants you can inject. There's ways you can make remove curse be more you know, hit them in the pocketbook or something, basically have it cost more money or have it cost more spell slots, or make them go on like a multi-quest chain event or having to do a specific task or defeat a specific creature in order to actually remove the curse. This helps a lot if the DM kind of builds a story around that item, but we're not all looking for, you know, cast into the fires of Mount Doom for every single item necessarily. But those are some good ideas to have, and some interesting little story seeds I think are provided here. And Pro, it's got a professional layout and design, including new artwork. I really like the way this book looks. It pops out all the different, you know, headings, and I think it helps that you can cram a lot of magic items on one page because we're not actually describing the items themselves. We're just going over the curses. But that was a good idea because if you include the item and the curse, all of a sudden this thing would be twice as long because you'd have a huge amount of content. So you do need the Dungeon Master's Guide, but I think you already have that. And thus, all you need are these curses, and it just looks awesome. Full page art. Look at that full page art, too, for an item book is really, really cool. Huge thumbs up to the way this thing looks. Cons, I got none, really. It's an amazing book. I guess I would have liked Famzax to have a little bit more personality and maybe some like paragraphs or some little bit more information here, I think would be more compelling and interesting. But that's not really going to be an official con. Like, I enjoy that he's there. I enjoy the forward section. I like the sidebars. You know, it's got all the things that I want to see from anything that's got so-and-so's, you know, personality in there. And then I enjoy the fact that we get so many different items in here. I don't think there's like 100 more items we could have done, but whatever. I'm not going to complain about having over 150 cursed items available and then the new stuff. So honestly, I don't think I have any official formal complaints for this product. Final verdict: with compelling new curses and fun item variants for dozens of items in the Dungeon Master's Guide, Famzax is the perfect supplement for the diabolical DM who loves loot with a twist. Thank you everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel, and you can support my work at patreon.com/Watson. Thank you.